I call the member for Ryde.
Thank you, Speaker. One of the first things I did upon my election to this place was write to a number of ministers, about a dozen in fact, seeking to put on the agenda a host of issues that I believe are important for my electorate of Ryde. I give credit to the Ministers for Transport and Customer Service who took me up on that offer, but they were the only ones. And as a result, a whole host of issues that have been reflected through this and previous elections have to date gone ignored, and I maintain that the offer to meet still exists. It is therefore no surprise that the budget that was announced today, whilst it had some benefits for my community, unfortunately missed out on a number of key areas that would have been addressed had we been able to proceed with those meetings. Areas that would have been addressed had ministers paid attention to my speech just last week in advance of the budget, speaking about some of the key critical pieces of infrastructure and social programs that are needed for Ryde. I wanted to list a few of them and just address them based on my preliminary analysis thus far of the budget. We've heard lots of discussions about the need for new education infrastructure in Macquarie Park, and yet today's budget had no start date and no end date. It's very easy to make statements in this place. It's very hard to deliver. Similarly, there's been no money allocated for the acquisition of TG Milner, notwithstanding the City of Ryde Council having engaged in good faith with the Minister for Local Government, moving copious numbers of resolution in a bipartisan and unanimous way, and putting it on the agenda as a serious, in fact, if not a high priority issue for the local community. No money in the budget. The Ryde Hospital redevelopment, which is continuing and which construction commenced in the previous term of government, does not have the additional injection of funds that have been asked for by the Medical Council there, the staff, and of course myself as a local MP. In fact, what I have observed from the budget papers today is that only $18 million or thereabouts have been announced. Now, this is potentially concerning for the delivery of this project on time and on budget, and I am foreshadowing risks for delays on this project. The Victoria Road widening, something that will benefit a member for Parramatta who's here, the members for Lane Cove, Drummoyne and Balmain. Previous to the election, it was an $8 million commitment to proceed with a feasibility study to widen that road. In the budget, there is $500,000. It's a $7.5 million cut to an important piece of preliminary work that must be done in order to embark upon this visionary and important piece of road infrastructure. I've spoken many times, both before the election and after, about my commitment to the Northern Centre, who provide important work for women escaping domestic and family violence and helping them via a program called Safety to stay away from many of these very, very difficult circumstances. Prior to the election, there was a $600,000 funding commitment to fund and finance this program. The government was only able to muster up $40,000, less than 7% of that funding commitment, and within the budget, that value is even that small, minuscule amount unspecified. I spoke about vouchers last week and the importance that they play. They're gone. They're no longer providing that important support for local communities, getting kids involved in sport and creative ventures. There was an Anzac Park upgrade for West Ryde, completely unspecified in the budget. This was an election commitment of the government, not of mine, and even that is not in the budget. There was a multicultural centre for Eastwood, unspecified, doesn't exist in the budget. I spoke last week about Park and Pay and the important work that that does for people living with disability to be able to get to and from events with ease and to know in real time and up front if they'll be able to find a car spot at their local community events. That's gone. A huge travesty not only for people who enjoy the technology nature of the app, but for people who have a very real need. Now, there are some additional funding allocated for Ryde in this budget, and of particular interest was the $1.1 million North Ryde Local Roads Improvement Project from the Housing Acceleration Fund. Now, ordinarily, I'd be welcoming new road infrastructure, but the lack of context, the lack of explanation around this project leads me to believe that this could be a precursor to the major privatisation and development of the North Ryde Common and Macquarie Mental Health Hospital, something that's causing great consternation in the community. But as I said, it was not all bad, and I do thank the government for continuing programs that were announced and funded under the former government, such as the fire station at North Ryde, the RNA facility at Macquarie University, the Eastwood Public School upgrades, which are progressing well, and of course for listening to our years-long campaign to amend the Parramatta Light Rail route, which has been reaffirmed, and I'm looking forward to its construction. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.